Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. So, of late, Biden and Blinken, no, it's not your imagination. Yes, it really does sound that much like something out of Alice in Wonderland. Looks like I'm like trying to show something off here. It's like, but Biden and Blinken have been referring to what is going on in Afghanistan as a civil war. There is no civil war that is going on in Afghanistan. There was no civil war that was occurring when we invaded in 2001. And at no point did this become a civil war. It was not civilian forces against civilian forces, which is pretty much the definition of a civil war. Now, yes, that it can be defined as civilian factions against the government of a country, but these people have not been fighting against the Afghanistan government. The Taliban has been fighting against the U.S. puppet regime that was installed in the country. Throughout the entire 20 years that the U.S. forces have been there, the Taliban has retained control of most of the country. What is happening now was always foreseeable. It was always going to be the Taliban having the upper hand in the country. Now, I have made mention of women's rights in Afghanistan, and in no way am I discounting any of this. This is a genuine concern. It should be a genuine concern. However, I've had discussions online with people that want to bring this up, talking about women's rights in the country. Well, I bring up Saudi Arabia and women's rights there. Are we going to invade and militarily occupy Saudi Arabia? No. That's not going to happen. Why? Money. Money. That's why. There are other countries that have, in the Middle East, where women's rights are completely forfeit. In Saudi Arabia, women can be stoned to death for cheating on their husband, or even lesser offenses for speaking against their husband. Journalists, Khashoggi, murdered for speaking out against the government of Saudi Arabia. They behead people publicly on the public square. And we're going to talk about, human rights, women's rights, all this stuff in Afghanistan. When I talk to these people that want to bring up women's rights in Afghanistan, I ask them, okay, so what do you think we should be doing? What do you think should happen? What action should occur? And they talk about continued military presence. They talk about one woman I was talking to and who wound up blocking me because of this because I am against warfare, I asked her, okay, so what do you think should happen? And she started referring to a peacekeeping force. I pointed out, a peacekeeping force is a militia. What she's really talking about is militia rule. How much freedom is involved in that? When we talk about women's rights, the U.S. military, via drone strikes and other means, have actually killed more civilian women and children than the Taliban has in the past 20 years. Do those dead or injured people feel like have any rights at this point? How many more people have to die or be injured, disabled, suffer PTSD, live under militia rule? Where does it end? How many more years? How many more trillions of dollars should we be spending on this? And what should be the outcome at the end? This is not a civil war for another reason, which you have probably heard mentioned online recently. When the Afghanistan forces, 300,000 versus 75,000 Taliban, laid down their weapons and surrendered, walked away, or retreated into other countries like Pakistan, that's not a civil war. That is a surrender. There's no war going on. And why did the entire Afghan security force do this? All of them. There were no pockets of resistance. All of them surrendered. Why do you think that is? The answer should be obvious. They actually saw no difference for the populace between the puppet regime and the Taliban. There's no difference. The people were still going to live under oppression and poverty and violence. It didn't matter who takes over the country. That's it. As far as women's rights are concerned, we've had 20 years to get these people out of the country. And I understand these people may not want to, leave their home country. Well, neither did the people in Syria while we were arming the ISIS and Al-Qaeda, or Iraq, which all led to the greatest the greatest refugee crisis in modern world history, actually in world history. How about the women's rights in Yemen, while we are still selling weapons to Saudi Arabia to conduct the worst humanitarian crisis in modern world history? How about the women's rights in Palestine? How about Venezuela? How about Iran, while we are sanctioning all of these countries and depriving them of food and medical supplies? Do they not have rights? If you're in favor of human rights, women's rights, children's rights, whatever, then you are for all of these people's rights all the way across the board. There's no exception to it. You can't pick one country and say we're gonna stay here for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, however long. We're gonna spend trillions of dollars while Americans go without medical care and go and wind up homeless, bankrupt. Our education system suffers, etc. And we keep on paying for it. What about human rights in this country? How about it? If we're discussing human rights, we're discussing human rights. We're not discussing human rights in one limited country. So even if we just discount the majority of our time there, Trump was negotiating the withdrawal of U.S. troops last year. So the withdrawal, evacuation of Afghan civilians, women, children, etc., should have been a part of this plan from that time, for at least the past year. Move forward and to Biden taking office. This should have been taking place from the time that Biden took office, or a few months ago when he said that we are going to be withdrawing. These actions should have been planned for and taking place at that time. That didn't happen. Instead, we get all this, oh no, the Taliban's not gonna just overrun the country. One weekend, it took them to take over the entire country. 1 3-day weekend, they took over the entire country. That tells you how good our intelligence is, right? It's like, if you can ever say intelligence community without laughing, then I laugh at you. Because you're as much of a joke as they are. If you have any respect for our intelligence community, then you are the biggest joke on the planet. Maybe they're higher in intelligence than the people who respect them, but that's about it. Yeah, and for most Americans, that's not saying much. So, what? The Taliban just took over with no resistance. That's it. They just ran. It took no time, no effort, no violence, no nothing. The most violence that we've been hearing about are warning shots at the airport. They're warning shots. A warning shot means nobody's getting shot. So, if our government had planned, then a vast majority of the people that are being seen, trying to pile onto aircraft and helicopters and so forth, that wouldn't be happening. What human rights do these people have at this point? And with the very structure of the social structure of Afghanistan, including under the Afghan government, the puppet government, if you take a look at that, the absolute vast majority of the ones actually making it onto the planes are men. The women still have fewer rights than the men do. The women get abandoned and left behind to fend for themselves. And our government isn't even providing any promises for any of them, period. So how much are we talking about human rights, women's rights, etc.? Not very much. So if there has been no fight when the top of the government fell, abandoned, ran like cowards, and the forces under their command just surrendered, that is not a civil war. That is not a civil war. You can't call it that. What that is a military occupation. Something that we have to understand is that the history of Afghanistan and many other countries in the Middle East is that they have a tribal structure to begin with. If you're talking about civil war, well, they've got tribes against tribes, cults against cults. But the United States can't say much about that. Look how many cults we have here. I have mentioned many times, Democrat, Republican, Trump followers, Hillary followers, Biden followers, Bernie followers. It's all cultism. So, we are a very divided country. If you think that if we had a civil war, that it would not be possible for us to have a civil war, you're wrong. It's very much a possibility. I mean, the KKK, you think that they're not a tribe, a cult, what have you? This is just denial. Anyway, there is no civil war going on in Afghanistan. Stop referring to it as that, because that's not what it is. It never has been. And the fact that you are just now hearing this term being used, pardon me, should tell you everything you need to know, because you haven't heard this being referred to as a civil war until, this year? I do not recall hearing it referred to as a civil war until the Biden administration. So stop calling it that. Stop falling for the rhetoric. This is narrative control and nothing but. Please share this video. Talk about these subjects. And if you can, please donate $1 a month to help expand the channel. And I will catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching.